Reusse Unchained here. All right, so we're going to follow while we record this the Mark Coyle press conference that may or may not be starting via Zoom here.
Zoom. He's
But
supposedly going to do 10 minutes on Zoom to fire our
10 minutes?
basketball coach, and they said an estimated 10-minute Zoom call. So anyway, what a
Wow.
what
Okay.
a
All
what
right.
a
That
what
is
a what an outreach guy he is. He's unbelievable.
Couldn't spare 15 to talk about. So he did say in the press release, and I don't have it in front of me, but just recalling it, that this is one of the most coveted or best jobs in the country, and
Yes,
touting Williams Arena. But yeah, so
yes.
Nico Medved is the Steam, the Colorado State
Yes,
coach.
I have a friend who's a basketball official who ran into him in the hotel yesterday out in Las Vegas and said he looked like a guy who was expecting a payday. So
Oh,
maybe he's the front runner. And you know that they do have some recruits. They have like three recruits, and Medved and Thorson were worked together at Drake and Colorado State. So my guess would be if Medved gets the job, Thorson stays, and that's the strong Minnesota connection there. So I don't know. I reached out to Thorson yesterday because thought maybe he and I should have lunch together today, and he said I'm not really I'm not really free at the moment to be doing stuff like that. So he might be waiting to find out what happens too. But I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk. I don't know. I mean, Medved did lose by 22 to Richard Pitino earlier this year in a game I watched on television, and the steam on Pitino is North Carolina State. That's
oh,
what I
okay.
heard. Yeah, so
I
that
think he
would
was
be
always kind of eyeing either like a school in the ACC region
yes.
or maybe
Virginia
even
too, right?
SEC.
Didn't I see that?
hmm I might have to write this a little later. I mean, as you get as you as you approach really old age, you kind of start lamenting some things, and I think I was too hard on Richard when you look at it in retrospect, because I was still one of the naive ones when he got the job, who kind of thought this was a good job, right? That this was a good job. We still had the fan base, because back then not nearly as many fans were coming in as in walkers as they are now when they come to the game, and they have to the handicap section is absolutely jammed at Gopher games now with 80
Yeah.
year olds. And so that was what the 2007, was it 2007 that he first came in,
Patino?
Richard?
No, Tubby was here
After
until like
Oh,
11. It was
11.
like
Okay, yeah, yeah.
2011,
So,
12.
so we're talking 15 years ago. So it was a younger crowd, and I don't think we Munson wasn't what we hoped he was, and he had, he did have the fallout from the restrictions, and he wasn't what we hoped. And then Tubby, we kind of said, man, he's kind of past it here. So Richard, I think I applied too high of a standard on Richard. That's what I think. And then he did. What was it, Phil? Like that year six, all of a sudden they went like 2-14 and two and
Yeah.
16 in the Big Ten or something. That I don't know where that season came from. That's the year that they lost to South Dakota and South Dakota State, and they had that one horrible season in there. But everything considered, he probably should have gotten fired when you think of this, what this job really is, which is a bad job. So
Yeah, he got well. Again, I used to do that coaches show with him
mhm.
for a few years, and his I would say, to sum up his, and he was right. 10 years, 12 years later, in retrospect, he came here and thought that people understood where this program was in terms of
Yes,
like the nation's pecking order. And he found out after, it was like the second or third year, and he was getting a little bit of criticism, the
hmm
Royces of the world, and he said, what I've come to realize is people think that this should be Duke or Kansas, and they don't understand that it's not
yes.
that, and it's
Well,
it's going to take time and resources.
I wrote a column that they posted today that they're running tomorrow. I wrote it last night, and I did point out that my favorite Coyle thing is the championship expectations that we have here, and he said we haven't been able to fulfill those the last 4 years. I pointed this out. They have fulfilled those champion expectations 3 times since Johnny Kunla was a star here. And Johnny in 2017 died at age 101.
There you
So
go.
we haven't been, we even when they allowed us to hang banners, there hasn't been a wall full. 1972, 82, and 97. And
Yeah.
when they won it in 72, it was the first time in 35 years. So this is not, and the barn used to be fantastic, mussy. It was full. Everybody was jumping around, but people were used to sitting on boards and being crowded into places and having to walk up long stairways and and then lousy concessions and crowded hallways and terrible parking. They were used to that. We're not used to that anymore. We'd rather stay home and watch it on TV. And when you're playing Howard Payne or somebody in December, we're not going to watch that if it's on TV. And it's it's I was reading some old Gopher Hole stuff, and they had this conversation about we're still a sleeping giant around here in basketball. Oh my God, what's wrong with you people? We're terrible. We're in an 18-team Big Ten. They finished what, 13th, right? Tied with, what was it, 5 teams for 11th to 7th to 16th or something.
Yeah.
That's where we are. We're 15th. You know, that's or Northwestern. Northwestern beats us handily twice. That's where we are as a program. That isn't bad. That's the whole dang program here.
So what's the commitment, though? I think the key question is this: what's the commitment, not just from Coyle, but the entire administration? Because
Yes.
that's the problem here. Like you can keep hiring coaches and firing them, but at some point in time, it's up to the administration if they care, and if they don't care, then don't fire the next guy.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's being interpreted that I said they shouldn't have fired him. I never felt I after they won those 2 games in California, I thought he had a chance to save his job. They'd gone 6-3, and then they were coming home to play. Who was it? I don't know. But those,
Washington, wasn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, was
Yeah,
that Washington
Saturday.
beat them, and what trumped everything that they did good is they lost at home to the 3 worst teams in the league, and they ended up going 2-8 at home. So he knew. I said this to Judd earlier. If you watch the end of that Wisconsin game, the last minute, and they showed him over there on the sidelines with 45 seconds to go, after they came back, tied it, went ahead, and it looked like, I thought this was the victory that might save his job. He knew he was gone. He knew he was gone, and I think, don't you think Coyle entered this season with the idea, I'm going to fire him? Unless he really does
Probably.
something that makes, yeah, because I mean, he looked at the sea, he looked at the crowds, and he looked at the lack of interest and everything else. And I, I, he was not Coyle. The one thing you can say in Coyle's defense is he was going to hire Brian Dutcher if they give him a chance to wait a little while and get him in here. And then the university president wanted him to hire Ben. So that's,
So he is talking right now, and according to Fox 9, Mark Coyle said when asked about like NIL challenges, NIL brought challenges, but the future of NIL will help this program. Everyone has challenges, so he's not putting it on NIL. He can't though, because if he puts it on NIL, he's kind of putting it on himself or other forces. So he's essentially saying, no, we fire Ben Johnson
I
for
finally
other
got
reasons.
real numbers yesterday. The Gophers this year had 1.2 million in NIL. They
Wow.
gave 500,000 of that to Dawson Garcia. So they distributed the others to, chump change to other guys. Elijah Hawkins got 750 to go to Texas Tech for one season, and Farrell Payne got 650 to go to Texas A&M. and you know that's what they're dealing with. So how much of that now that 20.5 million that they're going to give to athletes in the major programs? I don't know if they give Fleck's going to get most of that, but if they give what 15% of basketball, that'd be $3 million or something. That might help. But that people, I was reading something too on what some of the basketball experts, what they expect the going rate for a successful program to be next year, over 5.
Yeah.
And that NIL money, it's gonna, if you're gonna, and that doesn't guarantee you're gonna win, but that gives you a chance to compete. But it is astounding, isn't it? I mean, from the time Ben Johnson got here till now, the world has changed 100%. It's now, and as I wrote, that you got to be able to buy players. There's no other way to turn. It's buying players. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
No matter if it's the money that is coming out of the settlement or it's NIL, you have to be able to buy players. And in basketball, those 2 or 3 players are obviously more important than in any other sport because they,
And Cooper, I just looked this. It's hard to find like concrete information on who makes what, but you said the Gophers basketball team had about $1 million NIL budget. Half of it went to dust. 1.2. So Cooper Flagg from Duke. So you want to have any shot at one of the top players in the country.
Right.
He's between $3 and $4 million alone as one player on that Duke team.
BYU apparently gave this number 1 recruit that's going there $7 million.
Yeah.
So, I don't. I hope that's for the most of the career, not just for one season. But who knows? It might. I mean, it's the damnedest thing of all time. That what has happened, and I've said this 50 times. The biggest change in sports in my 60 years of being in the business is what's happened in college athletics the last 2 years. Big time college athletics.
Yep. They do have to. I mean, the Gophers have to be better, just period, within the current confines. But there needs to be like multi-year agreements, and it can't just be that any given year everybody is up as a free agent. It's chaos.
You got to make them sign contracts.
Yeah.
Of course, then again, the teams, you're going to give a 3-year contract to some hotshot. What if he can't play? If you get him and he can't play, and then you're on the hook.
Jelly roll.
Yeah.
Well, then at least maybe there's you can cut him, but it's a guaranteed NIL number or something. Which that's like NFL contracts.
But then you're not going to sign there.
Right. You got to have the NFL ability to get out from underneath the contracts. But I'm thinking there are guys like Elijah Hawkins. What's a rookie contract in the NBA? $1 million?
Oh man. Well, depending on where you're drafted, but
I mean, no, free. You make the team. A free agent. What's the lowest you can make?
Like around $1 million. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Elijah Hawkins and I had another year, or I could go try to make the NFL, what do you think I'd do? I'd stay there and make $750 again. By the way, Texas Tech had a good year with him, so he's. I don't know. It's a bad situation over there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Nico is the guy to change it, but it's not going to change rapidly. And I don't know. I'm not saying he shouldn't have gotten fired. I am saying that he never really had a chance. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The job's damn near impossible. He lost his entire team, basically.
If he brought back last year's team,
yeah,
he would, he'd be getting a 3-year extension, right?
So are they essentially saying then is part of this that, hey, we acknowledge that NIL, and you threw out the numbers, so you really need to get to like 3, 4, 5, you need to quadruple the amount of NIL you're bringing in. Yeah. Are they essentially saying, okay, we need someone who can coach better than Ben Johnson, but more importantly, we need someone who can get people excited to spend way more money on NIL But
Yes.
we need a PJ Fleck is essentially what they're
Yeah,
saying.
that's true. But here, Judd and I were talking about this yesterday, Phil. You got an athletic director. Has there ever been a worse salesman in the history of man? He's never out in public selling the team. He's got the personality of a wall. He's, he's the part of the athletic director's job is selling the program, isn't it? You
Yeah.
can't just send out a press release at 1:07 in the morning and then do a 10-minute Zoom call and
Yeah.
think you've done your
Well,
duties. And it's stupid. His
yeah.
excuse is he's on the selection committee. Okay, you get on a plane, you fly up here, you do a 30 or 40-minute regular press conference at 10:30 this morning, and you get back to Indiana. You get back to Indianapolis at 4 in the afternoon. You think they're making all their decisions with the committee by you have to be there Thursday morning to help them make these decisions on the
Yeah.
tournament when you don't know who half the teams are that are going to
They
qualify?
watch games. What they do, I've seen
Yeah.
it. They they
Yes, right.
they
It's
they
all
got Barca
crap.
loungers. They
And
drink Diet Pepsi or Coke, and they
and
watch
by the
games.
way, they've had other people in recent years who did it on Zoom, right? That they couldn't
I'm
make it
sure.
or
Yeah.
something like that. So
Yeah.
it's all nonsense.
But you know what,
That he,
Pat? The thing we don't talk about at all is this: the world has changed. You're right. So is Mark Coyle like the ads are basically all just staying, right? If I was a
yeah,
school with this changed world, I would look and say, oh, okay, I hired my AD based on these facts of how my program runs. Well, they don't run like that now. To me, the AD has become paramount, the most important person, because now you've got to be a wheeler and dealer. You've got to play somewhat loose at times. Like, that's the thing is Mark Coyle was hired to do a job that in some ways no longer exists.
that's true. But somebody brought this up yesterday. I'll concede that PJ Fleck is an upgrade. Okay, not take us to the Rose Bowl upgrade, but it's just not a goal anymore, by the way. But what else is he? What else since he came in here in 2016 has he improved? Softball is
Talking about
awful.
Coyle. Yeah.
Well, softball's awful. Volleyball's not as good as it was. Wrestling's not nearly as good as it was. You go down, baseball is, 2018, they were in a super regional. Now they're getting beat 29-1. Uh, what's he improved? What has he improved? He's gotten rid of 3 minor sports, and I don't know what he's hanging his hat on.
No, it's fair. Yeah. I mean, he would say, well, football. Football
Football,
is,
football,
football.
yeah.
We went, New Year's Day Bowl 5 years ago. And by the
Yes,
way, it's funny, 5 years ago, they actually would have been in the college football playoff if that
yes.
playoff existed. So he'll hang his hat on that. But all the other criticisms are 100% warranted.
And the other fact is now that this 20.5 million that's distributed, he's gonna not, and most of that's going to football most places. You think Phil's gonna graciously say, take a little more out of my budget and give it to basketball? I don't care. I'm fine. So
Yeah.
how
Hey, here's
about
a couple quotes, by the way, if you want
okay?
them
All
here. So
right.
Mark Coyle told the media Ben Johnson's staffers, Dave Thorson, who you mentioned, and Ryan Livingston have been asked to stay on during the coaching transition period. Coyle said at this time he isn't using a search firm to help find the next head coach. So no search firm. That's
No,
nice.
I think he
Um,
I think he
yeah.
probably got his guy, don't you? I mean, he had on when he fired Lindsey Whalen, which was I did write in my column that he has the bedside manner of Boris Karloff when he fires people, and I use Boris Karloff because the Gopher basketball crowd could relate to him from being a bad guy in the 1950s. But we, my column online has that photo of him and Kaler on the sideline when Clays is winning the Holiday Bowl, and it looks like they've just watched a mass murder. They're so upset on the sideline there. So he looked like a jackass when he fired, uh, you know, the way he reacted to a guy who was going to fire there in that game. And then firing Lindsay when the Big Ten women's tournament was in town was unbelievable too. So he's not doesn't. And then this occurs when Ben gets off the plane at midnight. So
Yeah. So we'll see if he drops any other bombshells in this press conference here. Hey, are you worried that the Twins are 2 games under 500 in the Grapefruit League, Pat?
I was just what I wanted to say was, man alive, being in spring training all those years. I thought people were interested in what was going on, and when we were in the station and doing the show from down there. I'm not paying any attention. I don't know what it's now. It's kind of the situation they're in publicly, but I think it's a deal when you're there. You're thinking, oh man, this is something, and when you're up here, you said, oh wait, I wonder if they played again today at midnight. You look to see who did something. So it's
Hey, yesterday, listen, they took the Pirates behind the Hammond Stadium woodshed. They scored 15 runs without a home run yesterday, and then they got 2 games split squad today.
I saw a story today. We're trying to give our regulars 8 or 10 more at bats than they had last year in spring training.
Yes.
I think that'll make a big. Don't you? That'll make a big difference. I think. Don't you?
It could. That's 7.
They're on their feet now. They're on their feet. Get them on their feet as opposed to get them off their feet. It's our new strategy. That's the slogan. Get them on their feet.
You got to go on TikTok and say that. We've changed the philosophy from off their feet to on their feet. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that one. Who's going to be a second baseman? Brooks Lee or Eddie Julian? They're giving Brooks Lee more at bats. Eddie finally had 2 hits the other day. Who's the second baseman? Brooks?
Probably Brooks, but also, I mean, I think Willie Castro's going to spend some time there too. Like they won't have a guy there that gets 400 at bats at second base. That not one player will get. It'll be a by committee approach.
If somebody calls them on March 26th and says they want Willie Castro, I bet they can have him.
Yeah, and then that might be what they say, $6.5 million. What's his
$6.5 million? $6.5 million. Yeah. 6.5 million. But I don't. They might not be as focused on payroll now as they were, because although who knows what's going on with the sale, with the stock market collapsing and everything else, it might not be the old money floating around that was floating around 2 months ago. So
yeah,
I don't know.
So hey, probably one more summer of great pull-out ownership. The people that sit through. Who gets sold first officially, the Wolves or the Twins?
I got news. April and May, people are going to be boycotting. How are we going to tell the difference? That's what I want to know in April.
Yeah.
We close the upper decks. That's what we do now in April and May.
Yes, we close the upper decks. Pre-boycott, we close the upper decks. So, all right.
All right, Pat. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week.
Okay, see ya. Goodbye.
All right, there he is. Reusse Unchained, Score North.